Welcome to another episode of Beyond Data Management Podcast, powered, as always, by HS GovTech. I'm your host, Cameron Garrison. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really excited. I've been looking forward to this particular episode for some time. If you, as a lot of you have been watching multiple of the different interviews and conversations we've been having, a very common theme comes up. And it's the fact that industry and the regulatory side are working in the exact same interest, especially when it comes to consumer safety, food safety. And it's really true. And we've talked to the Conference for Food Protection, Dr. David McSwain, and other people who are a part of that. And we wanted to have industry be represented and learn more about what it's like from their seat, because they have their own sets of challenges to contend with, in a lot of cases, really large organizations. And so we have three people with us today. And again, yes, sir, you're going to end up with the co-host title here. Chirag Bhatt in studio. And Chirag has not just obviously been in environmental health on the regulatory side, and now he's here at HS, but he's been in industry, Bucee's and Bloomin Brands, and many of them. So he's been in that world on industry as well. And then really excited about our two guests today. Joining us remote, Eric Martin, Senior Director of all things food safety and quality at Texas Roadhouse. Just as an aside, I love both of these establishments. The only gripe I have with Texas Roadhouse is the one near me is not on Uber Eats or DoorDash. And sometimes I'm lazy, but I still want Texas Roadhouse. I don't have that issue with Wendy. So our next one, really a well thought leader in the space as well, Jorge Hernandez, who's vice president at Wendy's. As I sort of had given away when I mentioned I can order Wendy's on my mobile ordering app. But gentlemen, thank you both so much for taking the time to talk to us and have a conversation. And we'll get in front of a broader audience of environmental health specialists to understand your world and what you all deal with and are targeting in any given time.
Yeah,
very good.
Thanks, Cameron, and welcome, Jorge and Eric. I've known them both as this professional for a long time, and Jorge is one of my mentor. You know, I always look up to him, and Eric and I go back a long many years. And I think earlier during one of the podcasts, we talked about the nail clipping in the iced tea.
We did.
So that's probably my best recollection of conversation with Eric, and it is so great, both of you accepting the offer to come join and talk about what's bugging you.
Let's start with the nail clipping thing. You put it out there. It was one of the most watched segments from your episode. It had a lot. And Eric told me the story personally when we were chatting at Conference for Food Protection this past spring in Denver. Let's get Eric's side of that story, because we've heard you tell it, Chirag.
Well, I'll tell you, many years have passed since that occurred, but I will tell you, it's just like you're almost, I can't believe this actually happened out there. So it was one of those that, again, the relationship that Chirag and I had back when I was in Houston many years ago, was one that, hey, Eric, I got to give you a heads up here on what's going on. And I really appreciated that. It's one of those things that I think all of us find different physical contaminations out there in our world. How did it get there? Was it done on purpose? Was it done by an accident? What was going on? You'll never ever get to the answer, because nobody's going to ever admit to doing something like that. But I think the bottom line is that you want to make sure that you do have these systems in place that will address that through education or whatever it may be. I think you're always going to find something that is going to go wrong in a restaurant. You just try to minimize it the best you can so that no one gets hurt. And in the case that there's always follow up with the management team to say, hey, listen, do you know this happened? How do we prevent it? And have that, basically that deep conversation with them to say, listen, we can't accept this. So, what's going on, and make sure you know your staff, make sure you know what their education is and how well they're making sure things are happening correctly out there. So again, it's a coaching, teaching, knowledge follow up. And again, I don't think in the years that I've had since that point, I don't think I've ever had another fingernail in a sweet tea. And it just happened to be Chirag at the time. How lucky am I about that?
And on a day that you were supposed to come to the office and have some discussion about food safety at Olive, we won't mention the names. But
well, you kind of just did, but
yeah.
Okay. No, it's talk about dumb luck, but actually good luck, because Chirag's a good guy and he took it to you. And so we'll back up quickly, and maybe Jorge will go with you and then Eric in order. Because obviously you all have a background in this prior to your current roles at Texas Roadhouse and Wendy's. So maybe just briefly, especially with a lot of environmental health folks in the audience, kind of what was your path that got you into this field, and then ending up in the jobs that you both have now? And Jorge, I'll throw that to you first.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you guys. I really enjoy this podcast, so it's great to be here. My path was a little bit different. What I found in this field is that everybody has a different path. Very few people that I know actually wanted to go in environmental health or food safety right off the bat, either through a friend or through accident, through certain things they end up into it. But mine was kind of like that. Actually, I was in medical school, and for financial reasons, I had to step out, which what I thought was going to be for a year or maybe two to go back into it. And the first job that I got offered was actually in environmental health as a health inspector. So I got the opportunity to go and work at a county health department and doing environmental health, which includes food safety, which include air safety, all of the parts of the environmental health field. And while I was doing that job, I actually really liked it. I started to reflect on the reason why I wanted to be a medical doctor. And behind it, there was this feeling that helping people go and help them through a medical issue and make them better and stuff was something that it was a worthwhile, life endeavor, something that I would feel very passionate about it and could do it for the rest of my life. But then when I got into environmental health, I actually found out that preventing people from getting sick was even a better way to serve my fellow humankind, right? To serve others. And I really, really fall in love with it, especially in the food safety area. And that opened up a job to a career that I'm still in it till today. From there, in the local health department, I went on to the state health department in charge of food safety, taking the laws, interpreting the laws into the food code, taking the federal food code and trying to put it into the state food code, and then ensuring that all of the health departments within the state would apply it consistently, certifying the inspectors, issuing food safety standards and interpretations, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll continue to do that in a different level, and you also become very, very helpful. From there, I went on to work. I got involved for a first stint with the FDA in a training capacity, still working for the state, but the FDA would pay my salary and my travel to go to other states, showing them what we were doing in Illinois and sharing, some of the called best practices, which led me to my next job at the National Restaurant Association, developing food safety training programs. At the time, the organization was looking for a program that could be implemented across all restaurants, or not restaurants, all food service establishment, all of the members, and they wanted somebody to lead that development, being able to come up with something that was not too technical, nor scientific yet, but based on science and the technical elements of, for example, the food code, but working with them to make it more applicable so that everybody can use it on a day-to-day basis. And we developed a program that is called Safe. And that was really an exciting time for me. I was able to be there for a number of years, not only kicking it up, but developing for a number of stuff. From there, I went to work for an organization called U.S. Food Service, which is the second largest organization in the United States for distribution. They had at the time about 100 distribution centers, 90 some 100 pretty much, and then about 14 processing facilities and a large private label business, and in charge of safety, quality assurance, regulatory compliance. With my background on the laws and the regulations and my background in education, they felt that it made me the ideal candidate to be able to use it in all of the different scenarios that I was going to be presented to. So that was an excellent opportunity for me. I really, really enjoyed that. I was there for about 12 years, 13 years. And then from then, I got a little bit tired of the corporate world, and a couple of things happened in the business world. They said, yeah, maybe it's time for me to try something different. I went to work for an entrepreneur at a small company, wonderful people who had one restaurant and had a dream to build it into a number of restaurants. So this would mean taking everything that I know and trying to put it into something from zero, from ground zero, from nothing. So developed that, worked with them, went from one restaurant to 7 restaurants and a processing facility. Was having a lot of fun when the Wendy's company called me and said, "Hey, how would you like to come and work for us? We're 7,000 restaurants in 34 countries, and we feel that your background can help us there." So I would be silly not to tell you that, right? So I took the opportunity, and I've been here now 6 years, having the time of my life and what I call the job of my life. So very excited to be here. That's basically my path. So I cross everything from the regulator side at the local level, at the state level, to the educational side, at the national and international level, to the distribution side, processing, and private label, and now, I'm an entrepreneurial. And so it's been a very, very, very full journey and a lot of fun throughout.
You packed a lot in, and you've done it all, like local, state, and now this. That's a full dance card. Eric, how about yourself? Like your kind of journey to where you are today.
But I started off as a microbiologist with General Mills Restaurants in Orlando, and that was actually my second job. My first job was actually working with an independent laboratory as a microbiologist. So I had a micro background going into the field of food safety. I actually thought I was going to be in the medical field, similar to what Jorge was doing. But then I got involved with food, and I thought, well, this is exciting. So I did go work for General Mills Restaurants as a microbiologist in the food team or food department there, quality assurance department, and worked there for 3 years. And during that period of time, I actually had the opportunity to work with a couple major outbreaks that they had at that time. And it was really interesting to be that in that aspect of it, and being able to go out there and be the problem solver. Okay, how did this happen? Where did it happen? What was the breakdown and things like that? And from that point on, it sort of was a turning point in my life then to say, hey, listen, this is sort of exciting. And then from there, they Darden Restaurants at that period of time said, hey, listen, we could use a problem solver like that out in the field. So I went out in the field as a quality assurance manager, doing those exact things. What were some of the opportunities that we may need to change out there, along with going ahead and evaluating restaurants and looking at training of managers out there, our frontline employees, finding those things that say, hey, listen, maybe we need to look at this a little differently and do things a little differently. So I spent 7 years out in the field doing that. And then I got called back to Orlando to take over as director of food safety and quality assurance for Red Lobster at the time. And then, that continued, unlike Jorge, I never spent time in the health department. So as I literally grew up in the field out there with going through and working for Darden at the time, I really listened a lot. I really talked to managers and got to feel how the operators worked. Built a great network. I met people like Chirag out there, and between them and other people that I met along the way were very, very influential in some of the thinking and the things that I did out there. And so as time went on, I had the chance to go and work in the corporate office as a director down in Orlando. From that point on, they had some changes to leadership and everything, and I moved on to with Margaritaville. In Margaritaville, I was the director of food safety and quality assurance, and spent a good 10 years with them until I got the knock on the door to say, "Hey, listen, Texas Roadhouse is looking to up their game in food safety and sanitation." Though they had a great program already established at Texas Roadhouse, wanted to take it to another level. And I had the calling to move from Florida up here to Kentucky. So that's what I did. And so since I've been here for 11 years now, and have enjoyed every minute of it, and able to do a lot of the things that I had the vision on. So what do we do to continue to enhance food safety programs out there, deal with those issues? As we started off this whole conversation, you always have those one-offs that you have to deal with, and how did that happen? And those still exist today, but you're always trying to fight it to say, okay, how do we prevent that? What caused it? Is it human error, or is it a systems error? And so working with that and working with people that I enjoy working with now, it's been a great ride.
And the one thing, a couple of people had commented that were not in EH that had watched some of this, and their comment was, "These are really smart people." Yeah. That comment came to mind here. Two people who would otherwise be doctors, but they're investing that brain power here. What does an average day look like? Like you guys are both in very large chains, different menu types, but you're spread out everywhere, huge operations. Where do you even start when you get into a role like that at Wendy's or Texas Roadhouse? Like how do you set priorities, and where do you start? If we want, we can go just in order on my screen here, Jorge, and then Eric.
Sure. That's a very interesting question, because in my life, there really is not a typical day in my world. Every day is different, and and you have to learn to be flexible, because sometimes I have an agenda in my mind. I'm going to work this, we're going to be able to do that. And then I get to the office, and undoubtedly something happened, and now I have to deviate and be able to do, other things. The thing that is, a couple of things are consistent, but one of them is always very, very fast pace, regardless of the day of the week. But depending on the time of the year and what the focus of the business is, it can be, I can think about it in a couple of ways. It can be either about a product, the program, or the team. Let me tell you some of the things that take my attention. And it is, if it's about a product, it may be a new product that we're launching, developing, and trying to figure out how to escalate it and how to be able to do that. Especially if there's some hiccups along the way, that's going to take a good part of my day to try to solve and figure out what do we do and how do we do it and where do we do it. Or it could be a part of, not only developing and putting the product in the restaurants, but the equipment that goes along with it, a new piece of equipment or equipment that we're using, and the procedures that go along that. Now, I'm going to be honest, I'm not doing this by myself. I have a very nice and capable team that works the majority of the work, but it gets to a point where you have to approve, disapprove, or pivot depending on the needs of the business, right? And that's when I get involved. And undoubtedly at the last hour, there is always a hiccup that comes up and say, well, we thought it was going to be X and that's going to be Y, and now blah, blah, blah. So we have to be able to do that so that we can push it across 6,000 restaurants in the next week. So that can be an exciting time where you have to be very focused and problem solving and using the information and data that was gathered to that point, to make some decisions. The other ones that it can happen, it can be about a program, right? We're starting to find issues with a certain part of the country, certain markets. So now you have to dig into the information and the data to find out, where is it? What is it? Is it temperature? Is a disruption? What are the things that are happening? A lot of times these are caused by earthquakes, fires, hurricanes, things that happen, that it may affect the restaurant, or it may affect the distribution center, or it may affect the processing facility. And now all of a sudden, you will not have either the equipment, either the ingredients or the products getting on time to where you need them to be able to either to manufacture a product or to have the product at the restaurants. So now you have to again rather than team in problem solve to try to get all of those things going, right? And the last one is about people. Sometimes, we have issues with we need a specific person with certain skills in a different area and they're on vacation or they're on leave or they're already occupied with something. So you try to figure out how do you manage that? What are the things that you do to be able to, again, serve the business, serve the customers, and ensure that the safety and the quality of the product, which is critical to the brand, are not going to be compromised at any point, right? So a lot of that. The only thing that I would say that is also consistent is, you're always getting business updates, and whether it's budget or sales or things like that. So the thing that I don't know, but I think that so I was thinking about it. That is consistently there is data. Stuff into you, numbers or things and stuff. So now being able to transform that into information that is going to influence the direction of your decision, that's a key part of it. Because everything that I just mentioned is about what are the facts, what are the things, what do we know, what data do we have, so that I know what I can do and what I can't do, and the decisions that I can take to be able to push the product, stop the product, or move the things around so that we can continue to execute at the restaurant level in a way that we all feel safe. So that's kind of like what happens, more week to week, month to month, and like I said, really not the same thing every day. I rarely get to go with an agenda in mind as to walk in and actually get to execute on all of it in a day.
Yeah, because especially with 7,000 plus locations, right? Breaking news is going to change everything, and you never know what's going to pop up. That's a special person to do that.
Yeah, and then you're in 3 or 4 countries. So sometimes these are national level in other countries. So yes, it's always an exciting time. That's what makes it fun.
Yeah, you're wired for that. Eric, how about yourself? And I imagine you have probably you're dealing with different vendors, supply chain wise, with a sit down menu like Texas Roadhouse. Yeah, how do you deal with that unanticipated and try to feel like you're controlling your agenda?
Yeah, I tell you, I'm very much like Jorge here. It's like there's a million things going on. No day is the same out there. I always the analogy I have is, you ever go to the old circus where the guy is spinning the plates and he gets like 25 plates and he's got to go back over to the first one and start spinning that one again before they all break. Sometimes it's like that. You do a lot of juggling out there, and again, you come in with an idea. Hey, listen, I want to work on this big project. And then, in our world, things change. Our managers or MPs out there are the center of the universe to us. And so my focus is how do I help and support that particular MP and the store out there for whatever they may be doing. It may be a simple question about a procedure, or it may be something a crisis, to where, just yesterday I had a manager said, hey, listen, I just got word that I have an employee that has been diagnosed with E. coli. And I said, okay, well, this is what we do. And he was very, very anxious and scared, and what do I do, and things like that. And to bring a little bit of calmness to the situation and say, hey, listen, let's work off some facts. Let's look at a lot of things here. We're used to doing this. We've got some great contacts and networking out there. We'll get you through this. And by the time I hung up with him, he felt really good that we had this under control and that nothing was going to happen. And that's exactly what happened. Nothing occurred out there. It was sort of old news and everything. And it was one where I'm sorry, I got a phone that keeps going off over here.
No worries.
But even though I had it silenced, but it's one of those where calming him down and looking at the facts and talking to the right people, and basically the problem went away. And the good thing is the person hadn't worked there in quite a while, and that was a good thing. So there's no possibility of contamination in the restaurant. I think the other thing that you look at and say, okay, how do I look at the big objects out there that I like to work with when it comes to projects and things like that, whatever it may be that I'm working on at the time, to again be that preventative type of role out there versus you always have the firefighter role. Are you the firefighter? Firefighters they only fight fires 10% of the time, and the other 90% they're trying to prevent fires. And that's exactly what we do out there. We try to prevent fires with whatever means necessary, or changes, or things like that. I'm very, very lucky though. We have about 75 of our product coaches out in the field, and they're all CPFS certified. So those folks are visiting our restaurants and really getting to the point where they are inspecting the restaurants and making sure that those plans that we have put in place from my level on down are being carried out. Between that and our internal audit, those folks are always in the restaurants to be able to coach and train in, and at the same time, if they find a situation that doesn't look very good, that they're bringing that up to, the executive level within our company. So those things are addressed immediately. So it's talking with a lot of folks out there each and every day. Like I said, my phone rings all the time. And then when it's not ringing, I'm usually working on a new project or something like that. But bottom line, it is never the same every day. And some days I get done and I go, well, I meant to do that today, but that didn't happen. So let's go, okay, well, I'll put that on the list. I think the worst thing is when my boss walks in the office and says, hey, I got something for you. And I go, oh, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. That's the worst. Yeah.
It's that unplanned stuff. How much, and this, I'll be honest, this is just a personal curiosity question. And I have no data on this. I have no inside information. But I live in the real world, right? And I live in it and I observe. And it seems like maybe loosely correlated to around the time of the pandemic, things got really tough in the restaurant business, because even now, 2025, all this years later, it's so common it feels like turnover's worse. It feels like they're always understaffed. They can never get people to actually take the jobs. And I think the food safety element question of that is how big of first of all, is that true? Is it becoming harder to build stable staffs and get that continuity? And then how do you account for training and food safety continuity when you're having a hard time even maintaining in some chains or in some locations, even just a baseline staff to keep the lights on? And how far off is my observed perception from reality at a macro level? And whoever wants to jump in on that first, it's fine. And if both of you, that's great too.
Well, I tell you, I'll start. I'll start on this one. And we have been very, very lucky in that we treat our folks really well. We pay them well. We treat them well, and people want to come to work for us, and they know that because of our brand and how we do take care of people. They're excited to work for us, and they make good money. If you're a server at Texas Roadhouse, you make very good money. I just met a lady the other day that's been with us for 30 years.
Wow.
And as a server, and it's like, what makes you stay that long at her restaurant? And she says, you're my family. You are my family out there, and family watches family. And during the whole COVID situation, we didn't let anybody go. Yes, people left us, because sometimes they were almost making more money sitting at home versus working in a restaurant. But we let no one go, and it was really good that Kent Taylor, our founder, really had that in mind, that we are a people company first that just happens to serve steaks.
And if I recall, didn't he give back or forfeit his pay or drastically cut it as part of helping you all keep your rank and file team?
Yes, he did. And we did have several of our executive team that did the same thing, where they gave up their salaries and said, hey, listen, we need to take care of our people. And he did that. And that was, that really built loyalty within the company. And do we struggle with labor sometimes? Absolutely. There's times where that can be definitely a hard time. But when you're a server and you know that on a Tuesday night you can make your bank on everything because the restaurant is so crowded on a Tuesday night, that's a place you want to work. You don't want to be bored. You don't want to do this. And I think it's all the other excitement that we add to our restaurants that keep our staff there. We have turnover like everybody else, but I will tell you that we probably have less turnover than a lot of other restaurants.
It shows
there.
up in your results, right? And I think, so many
Yeah.
of this is all probably connected. You rightfully got such great press during the pandemic, the way you treated your people. And you guys are crushing it now, right? You guys have been recently in the business news everywhere for, I won't even name them, but taking it to the the non-American named National Steakhouse. Like, you guys are really flying high right now.
Yeah, actually, one of the things that we're really, really proud of is that we were just named the number one restaurant concept in America, and we took over from the second place, who's second place now, which is a former company that I used to work for. So we're really proud of that. When we look at our guests, our loyalty, it's almost like it's almost like a cult to people sometimes coming to Texas Roadhouse and enjoying themselves and enjoying our rolls and our hand cut steaks. It's definitely some place that people love to come in because we treat them like family.
Yeah, that's amazing. And throwing peanuts on the floor is a lot of fun. It actually, the whole family likes that, right? I have a 4-year-old. He enjoys cracking, and he's not allowed to obviously throw things on the floor at home. And so it's actually a treat to be able to just to trash the place a little bit, but within the boundaries. Jorge, I would imagine that it's a little bit different because obviously the concept is different. Fast food tipping is not really, you don't have larger tickets and tips. How has the evolution in workforce and all of that affected you? And then how does it impact your ability to keep a trained staff so that you're not waking up in cold sweats at night wondering who's doing what and that you're going to have to deal with the next day?
Yeah, the way that you started the question, I think is very interesting. During COVID, the thing that was most scary for us that we did not know, that we did not have any experience with something like that. Science wasn't there, and there were a lot of conflicting messages. You remember, right? Use masks, don't use masks. Who can work? Be able to do that. There was a little bit of an unsettling time for us and many others in the industry because the information that was coming from the government sources was not consistent, it was not reliable at times. So we had to work very hard to be able to communicate internally and have that communication go to our restaurant team members and being able to calm them down and say, look, this is acceptable, this is not. Develop the practices, the distance, and when to use the mask, how not to use the mask, to be able to do that. But overall, we actually did very well during that time. If you remember, restaurants were allowed to be able to do that because they were considered, a very big source for food for the communities. So we actually did very, very well during that time. That doesn't say that we don't have issues like most restaurants in the industry with labor. But what we find is that it's not necessarily across the board. There are certain markets that are tougher to staff than others. And there are multiple reasons for that, right? Sometimes the restaurants, as the population grows, are not necessarily in the right area of time that you want your kids to work with, right? So certain people shy away from trying to work there, especially if you work in the evenings or at nights and be able to do that. So we have to be able to develop the incentives for people to be able to come and work and be able to do that. So we work very hard to ensure that the safety of our people as well as the safety of our products are always taken care of. But it is a consistent battle that we continue to do, and we continue to try to improve to do better. One of the things that I don't have sweat at night for this is because our approach to food safety is not necessarily to rely on the person who's affected. Don't take me wrong. They're very key to the execution of the food safety. But what we've done is we try to build food safety system around that person. So we build it, and I think Eric mentioned the word food safety systems already 3 times. We are exactly the same way. We build it into the product the ways that we can. We build it into the equipment that we have. We build it into the practices that are going to be executed all the way from the farm or from the processing facility to all the way through, to make it easier to execute, to require less training and less sophistication in our employees. That doesn't mean that they don't get trained. We have a strong training program. We have a recertification program every year. We do a lot of things to ensure that the training is there, but more and more we rely on this to surround it by the systems to ensure that that safety is maintained throughout, every day, every time, with every meal, and not necessarily, trying to get a little bit of, of forgiving somebody forgot to do something. We build it on in, or we try to build it all in throughout. So that's how we approach it. So that's why I'm not as concerned as I could be if we didn't have that way of looking at food safety, because food safety and quality, by the way, is something we want to do as the way we work, not something we want to do on top of where we work. In my experience, throughout all my career, we build it as the way we do things versus you do it and then now you figure out how you're going to do food safety on top. It used to be that somebody go to work and they said, oh, now you have to go to food safety training after they already learned how to receive, store, prepare, serve, right? We don't do that. From everything that you're going to learn, yes, you will get the food safety training, but food safety training is embedded in every practice that you're going to do for us. It's already there, whether you know it or not. So that now our challenge is making sure that the execution happens consistently all the time, which is a little bit different. Does that make sense?
It does, and it's so interesting because I think they proved why they are in the league they're in, and here having the conversation, because that makes so much sense. If you're institutionalizing it, then you can weather the labor market kind of ups and downs, right? But if you're going to bet the farm on getting everybody up to speed that you have to churn through and out the door, that's not a good way to live. That makes sense. And also, again, lived experience. I just observe what I live in the world, whether it's from a delivery service or in the line at a drive-through. Wendy's is faster, like consistently, like kind of Chick-fil-A level. The worst, I can't believe I'm about to do this, but it's been a pet peeve of mine lately. I love, because I grew up in North Carolina, I love Bojangles. I just love the food. They forgot how to put it together and serve it. And I really hope that they'll find the fairway on that, because that's just been a part of my life for most of it, and I really love it. But sorry, totally digress. And Chirag, I know you've been in this, you were a colleague with them in a couple of phases of your career. So I know there's a lot on your mind. So I will stop hogging the mic and throw it over to you.
Yeah. So the information that we all know, the regulatory infrastructure is different when you go from state to state or agency to agency. And in some cases for you, Jorge, probably from country to country. So there is a different dynamic, there is a different regulation, there is a different requirement, there is a different culture behind the inspection process. So how do you accommodate all that changes and the day-to-day operation? And then to add to it, how do you collaborate with the regulatory folks in those areas so that you maintain your brand standards at the same time serve safe food to all your clients? Because that's probably the biggest challenge when you're in a multi-level, multi-state operation as far as the restaurant industry is concerned. And I'm sure it's probably true for any other food service operation as well. So I'll start with you, Eric, and or Jorge. Jorge, you do it because you got international location as well.
That sounds good. I'll stand this time, Eric. You go next, please. So, no, you're absolutely right. So what we've done is, and this may be different from other folks to be able to develop these programs. What we develop a program is based on science. One of the things that we know that doesn't change from jurisdiction to jurisdiction or from country to country is actually the science of food safety. Yeah. So we make sure that all of our practices, all our procedures, all of the things that we do are strongly grounded on science. We take regulatory compliance very seriously, but the basic of all of that is science. And more than 99% of the time, when you do it that way, regulations don't become an issue as hard as we have, right? And what we do, and when they do, when there is a difference, then we work with the regulators and said, look, this is what the regulation says. This is our science behind whatever the issue is, whether it's time, temperature control, or any of the procedures that we have on storage or shelf life or any of the things, to try to have a conversation that it would allow us to have a deviation, if possible, from the standards. You remember, I had my extended working with health departments, at the state level, and being able to understand regulations. So I know that there is a lot of very well educated and grounded health officials who will be amenable to those kinds of conversations, and they give you a deviation to be able to do that, as long as you can provide them the scientific information behind your standards, right? Because when you develop laws, when you develop regulations, you try to cover so many different products, so many different things, so many different types of businesses, that you really have a very large blanket that may or may not apply to every single thing. But if you have the scientific basis to be able to do that, it shouldn't be an issue of safety to the consumer. So that's how we do that. And we take that approach globally, because that's the other beauty about using science as a basis for your systems and your standards, right? It doesn't matter which country they are, bacteria growth, all of the things that you have, are going to be workable. What we have a problem, and this is mostly in international markets, is the type of controls that you can use are not always accepted in some areas. And I'm talking about chemicals. Some chemicals are strongly restricted or basically not available in some parts of the world. In those cases, what we do is then, we go back to the science and, okay, what is available and what will we be able to use in this country or in this region, that would allows us to have the same level of confidence that we have as we build the program globally. So that's how we manage the whole thing, and then we do have a way to document where those variances are. The reason for that is one of the things, and maybe we'll get into it, maybe we won't. One of the things that is very top of mind of in my head at least, is that the world is changing. Things are changing. Very, very concerned with the evolution of pathogenic bacteria, and the evolution of resistance, of some of those bacteria to current controls. Let's put it that way. So as these things happen, and as we start perhaps at some point documenting that those things are not going to react the same way they reacted before to the chemicals we use or the controls that we use, we need to know where we're not using them so that we can have the procedures or the processes to substitute what we're doing today with something we might be doing tomorrow, and ensure the safety of those products across the globe. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So with the evolution of the chemicals and the ingredients and the supply chain, you also have evolution of social media. So that's another ball game that you got to worry about, because you're going to get a lot of pushback, a lot of exposures, and so on and so forth. So no, I totally comprehend that. And so on top of the regulatory infrastructure being different from agency A to B, etc., do you get any pushback, not only from your C-level, but also from the regulatory side? Because, hey, Jorge, you can't do this because we can't afford it. And you're going to have to turn around and say, but no, it is requirement in their country or in their state. So we have to do it. And, I'm sure you probably get like that.
So Well, I'm not sure I understand your comment, because you brought in media, you brought in the social media aspect to it. So I'm not connecting the question to that yet.
No, it was the evolutionary part that I was just referencing, that even social media has just flourished. But no, the pushback. Yeah, go ahead on the pushback side. Yeah.
Yeah. Internally, we don't have any pushback because we are committed to meeting the regulatory requirements everywhere.
Wow,
that's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, but remember, when we do is because we already have the studies of the science behind to be able to prove that we're going to be as effective with the if we have to use a different chemical, for example. That I can think of. That's probably the most common thing, right?
Yeah.
A different chemical that is not available in the country. So we do the studies, we do the work, we do the stuff, we work with the companies and say this one will provide the same level of effectiveness as the one we're using everywhere else. And we're going to have to do that. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, our supply people don't like it, right? Because now they have to source it from a different place and all kinds of other things. But we are committed to do that. And I have not yet found any pushback in being able to comply with regulations at all.
Yeah. It's also probably a really bad move for a
Yeah.
supply chain vendor to tell Wendy's no. I would imagine that's a bad business move. And Eric, I think you all have locations in 11 countries, right? So you also are dealing with multinational integrations and booting up.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo everything that Jorge said out there. I think that one of the things that really allows us to go into those countries and actually have really great food safety programs is that we put a lot of work into the franchisees that we are picking out there. We're not going after someone or having someone that comes in and is a franchisee for us. And all of our international restaurants are franchisees. We have some on military bases out there. We have some that are not. And so when we look at their track record, how many other restaurant companies do they have? What do they do? So the vetting process is just unbelievably strict as we go out there and look at franchisees. So when we start talking about sources of products and things like that, a lot of that's already established. And then we have our team from here in Louisville that visits all those restaurants that, even though they're franchisees, we have some folks that are helping to manage that from a corporate standpoint. And, they travel all the time throughout the world, making sure that those standards are continually met out there. So when it comes to doing that, and I think that going back to just from a domestic standpoint, we adopt the latest food code everywhere, whether it's in the U.S. or overseas, and then we deal with those anomalies out there. What is a little bit different in this particular jurisdiction? Can we get them to buy into something that we did based on the science, like Jorge said? Let's have a good discussion. And I think that's where we've got to give a lot of credit to our health department colleagues out there. They do a great job about sitting down with us and talking about it. And it's just like it's never no, 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 no. It's like, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's present our side. Let's hear your side, and let's come to a point where we understand. And in some cases, yes, maybe there's a variance that we need to apply for or something like that. But I think that as I see more and more states and jurisdictions getting onto the current food code out there, the 2022 food code, there's less of that controversy or questions and things like that. It's made a huge difference in our ability to standardize throughout the world on those. Yes, if I go to the Middle East, yes, there's some things that are a little bit different over there, especially when it comes to nutritionals and things like that. And something we just deal with those on a case by case basis or a country by country case basis. And then we have experts over there that are ready to do it. They understand the country. They understand the laws in that particular region of the world. And I rely on them to do a lot of it, because I sure can't keep up with 11 countries plus everything else that's going on in the United States here.
Yeah, some days it's hard enough to keep up here, isn't it?
Yes, exactly right.
What would you say though about I'm very curious. Do you find that the U.S. standards and regulations, are they the strictest, or are you where do we fall if you're basing it like on FDA 2022? Are there countries out there that are even stricter, or most of them a little more relaxed?
Well, I will tell you that probably I think the USA food code is the standard out there. When I start talking to other countries, they are following that. I would say that you do get into the Middle East. I would say that in the Middle East and some of the countries there, Don't ask me to name which ones, but I feel that they are taking it to another level. I think that when they come in and visit a restaurant and do an inspection, even the slightest little thing that may be wrong out there, they could close you down. And
Wow.
so it's a lot tougher, I would say, and we got to really stay on our toes a lot more out and I would say especially the Middle East than probably anywhere else in the world.
That's
We
fascinating.
have some very, very tough jurisdictions within the United States, and do a heck of a job and really hold everybody accountable, but probably not at the same level that we see abroad.
That is really interesting about the Middle East.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that most of your Texas Roadhouse in the Middle East don't have bars either, right?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. We do have some mocktails out there though, and yes, and there's a couple things that we don't serve on our menu that we serve in the United States, but for the most part, you are correct.
Yeah, the collaborative approach and the collaborative style, when it comes to regulatory side versus the industry side, has come a long way in the last few years that I have witnessed, and I'm sure you have too. Except for a little town called Cut and Shoot, Texas, that you may go and inspect. Yeah, you're going to find Sheriff Buford being in charge of the health department, so it's his way or highway. But for most progressive cities and the counties and the state now, you could find a little more collaborative style that they want to work with both parties equally to make sure that the food supply that's put out there in the market is safe and wholesome. So yeah, that's come a long way.
So
Funny you should mention Cut and Shoot there, Chirag. I used to live about 5 miles from there, and I know the sheriff, and he said he's coming after you. So beware, okay?
Oh boy, Chuck. You know what? It may have been the ballet or the ballet flats that you wore on the inspection. So I was on an episode recently, and the AI put a pair of ballet flats on him doing an inspection.
Sheriff Buford would have gotten me at that time.
What thing's interesting, if you were like just ruler of the universe and you still had the job you have now, although you'd probably lay it down if you could control the world, but what would be the one thing that if you could just like impose your view, or impose is too strong of a word, have adopted your view that would be universal across regulatory agencies? What's the area where you think there's either the most disconnect or you think there's potentially room for further collaboration and service of improvement?
Well, I tell you, I'll go back to something Jorge says is trust the science. I think that, when we go through and we have stuff that's presented at the Conference for Food Protection and the science part of it, and when it's proven that it is successful and it is the right way, believe in that science and adopt that science. I think there's a lot of hesitation that people say, well, I'm not sure if we can reduce the water temperature of a hand wash sink, or I'm not sure about this sanitizer but when the science says that it is good, I would like to see that recognized a lot more to help our industry out. We definitely, we're on the same side. We don't want people to get sick. We don't want things to happen out there. But I will tell you, we have come a long way based on the science, but I think there's anytime something new is introduced, everybody says, well, wait a minute, I want to do this, and this, when we really got to believe in it.
Yeah, especially when you've got data to back that up. No, go ahead, Jorge. Sorry.
Can I build on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I'm going to support what both Chirag and Eric said. First of all, over the last 5 to 10 years, I've seen an increase to be more collaborative that I've never seen before. Remember, I mentioned that I was at the beginning of my career a regulator. I remember times when I was a regulator, we could not invite industry to be part of our meetings because we didn't want them to know what we knew. It was us versus them. Yeah. It was very real. And while it hasn't 100% gone away, there's still that in some areas, and it's something that that Eric said. Some people don't want to accept that yet, and I don't understand why. But we have moved years ahead, with the collaboration. We have really moved ahead, and at the end of the day, we have to remember that our jobs is to do exactly the same thing: protect the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Our us is protect our customer, but we are in the same thing. So if you think about it, the collaboration between regulators, industry, and academia should be a no-brainer.
Yeah, it really should.
The trust in science should be a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still not there, and I don't know why. But we are better, but we're not there. So I'm hoping that over the next 3 to 5 years, we can get there, because it's just going to accelerate our impact on the safety of production and management across the entire United States and in the world. By the way, that's not unique to the United States. There are countries that still don't have the same old mentality that we have here. So that's an important point for your audience to remember. We are in the same business you think. Mm-hmm. That's protect the consumer, protect our customers. So let's trust the science and let's move together versus let's move against each other. That's an important message that I just wanted to point out.
Yeah.
Cannot get lost. Should not get lost in this conversation.
That adversarial almost kind of default setting that you're right did used to be a lot worse, but it's got to go away. It's got to go away. And if you go to CFP, I think they put the science front and center. And departments can trust that. And also, like, you guys are there. Like, I had conversations with both of you. I remember telling you, Jorge, just how much I loved all the new Frosty derivatives that you guys were releasing. I'd like, wow, about time. But those are, and I heard the nail clipping story from the first time at CFP. But you can, I think, and I think you all would agree, there's a model there where there is an attempt to follow the science, isn't there?
Yeah. Hey, shout out to John Lee at
been there at CFP. There's still some people don't trust it.
Yeah.
We need to get over that, right? You don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's still
work to do
of that, but I think more and more maybe with
so you raised it. What do you think what's the driver of that? Is it just resistance to change? What's the fear or what's the emotion to want to hold on to an old way, even if science has proved it's not the right way?
Fear of losing your authority.
I don't know, but I'm going to speak personally, and this is not about my company, it's not about Eric, I don't know, but I think it's just a loss of control.
Yeah.
Just some people like to have the control, right? Mm-hmm. And just by definition, trust means that you're trusting somebody else. You're giving up that control. And some people that's all they have, right? It is my way or the highway, like Chirag. I don't know if he was saying it tongue in cheek or not, but there are some people like that, right? And even they will not trust the science. They will not trust the right thing. They still feel I have to have control. It's my say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That they'll be able to do that.
Discretion of the inspector, and they don't want to let.
That's the kind of thinking.
Yes,
that you do what I say, right?
Yeah.
Versus let's work together to do the right thing.
Which, not to be overly harsh, but that's more of like a mall cop mentality, right? Mm-hmm. Than a regulator working towards the same end goal, which is to keep people healthy.
Exactly right. And to work together towards that goal. It's like, I caught you to doing the right thing. I don't know, and actually, in the old days, and I, haven't kept up, there was a system in some jurisdictions that shall remain nameless, that for every violation or type of violation, you would get a fine. And that's how the health department was funded. So see the contradiction there?
Mm-hmm. It's like a speed trap in a small town, right? They want you to speed through there because it's a big part of their budget.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of mentality, that's the kind of systems that don't work towards the great of the common good, how can we get better? Yeah, we find an issue, how can we fix it? What are the things that we have? And that creates fear on the industry that's in those areas. That creates us versus them mentality that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
Food safety is one of those things that is a team sport. It's not an individual sport. And you try to do it by yourself, you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah, and bad things will happen. So, Eric, I'll throw this to you first, but I'm interested in both of y'all's take on this. It's not a political question, because last week, the most recent episode at the time we're recording this was with David Dijak from NEHA. And he said something that has really stuck with me and has gotten a lot of feedback from viewers. He said that he felt that environmental health departments had a real problem right now, because coming out of the pandemic, they've gotten the reputation or the label of being, and I'm quoting him here, tampering with people's personal freedoms and tampering with the free market. And he went on to say that he felt that it's something that needs to be dealt with, that is still a hangover that hasn't been dealt with. And I just thought it was really interesting, especially coming from someone like himself. It was very introspective. How would you all respond to that? Because it's, even when someone like the CEO of NEHA says that there were agencies that were, and what made me think of it is what Jorge said there, which is that my way or the highway. So like dictatorial on something that was going to change in 3 days anyway. As you look back now with perspective, what's your take to what Dr. Dijak said? And is that a perception problem that lingers still?
I will tell you that that may be a perception at a very high level within government, but I would say that us that work with the local jurisdictions and things like that, I don't see that happening. I think the relationship and the conversations and things like that are still happening out there. I really haven't seen a change in that. He may have another perspective that he deals with on his level, but I know that when it really comes down to how are my restaurants perceiving health inspections, they're not coming in to say this is they're not fair anymore or anything like that. They still have fair. Now, I will tell you that probably there's some things that they're calling that they've never called before. But I think that, is it fair? Yes, I think that they're finding the things that they need to find. Maybe they're looking a little harder, but that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. It's where something is called that isn't part of the food code or isn't true, and that's a rarity. It really is. And I think that from a local jurisdiction or state jurisdiction, we're not seeing much of a difference there, be honest with you.
That's great. Jorge, how about yourself?
Yeah, I personally haven't seen that, what he's referring to. I maybe that's a general public perception. I haven't seen it in the industry, and I haven't seen it within my company, just like Eric said. To us, and at least from our perspective, the way that we look at health departments is they're another check to make sure that we're doing the right thing according to our systems, right? If we're doing the right thing, there shouldn't be a problem, and there isn't. And if we're doing the wrong thing, then we need to correct it, because it only helps us improve the safety of our products to our customers. So it's not adversarial. It should not be controversial. We do have, like Eric said, situations, and what we're discussing at the moment is where there are people who, I don't want to say they abuse their position, but they are very strong in that, no, it's got to be done this way. My concern with those, and sometimes, and actually I had it a couple of months ago, where somebody said, in my jurisdiction, you're going to do it X, Y, and Z way. And what they don't realize is that our system, which goes farm to fork, is all very coordinated to be able to do that. For that person to do that actually makes the product less safe than not, because he only sees the last part. See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That was a challenge. And it was a personal conviction of somebody who thought he was doing it right because he learned it somewhere, I don't know, or because somebody else was doing it. But what he didn't understand, just like Eric, like, we have different products, we have different situations, we have different risks, different equipment, different processes, different procedures, different suppliers. You cannot assume that because it works in Eric, it's going to work the same with me, or vice versa.
Yeah,
that's the kind of thinking that they need to understand and appreciate. It would go away if we work in a collaborative situation where we can show them what we do it this way and not the way this person wants us to do. So still there, like I said, it hasn't gone completely away. Hoping that it goes, because we need them. We need the regulators. We need also the regulations, the regulators. We also need the academia to work together with us to work to improve the safety of the entire system.
Yeah.
Food safety should be a given for every person who lives, not only in the United States, everywhere in the world. It's a right to everybody, to have, not something that we should be fighting about doing it this way or that way.
I like that. It is a right. Yeah, you have a right to not eat food that's going to make you sick or do something to you. And I know we've taken
human right.
Yeah. Maybe I'll need to
is.
open a location and cut and shoot next.
Cut and shoot. So I have one question. Obviously, one of the end work products of any inspection is an inspection report, and with 3,000 approximate different environmental health departments around the country, how are you all approaching knowing or trying to get access to be able to have in your programs and for your awareness the actual inspections that the inspectors do? I know there's no one standard or clearinghouse nationally, so is that a challenge, and how do you all go about making sure you've got as much of the health department data as you can?
Well, I'll start here, is that we require every one of our restaurants to go ahead and turn in a health department report within 48 hours.
Do they?
We also have, so they have to scan that and send it in to us. Also, we have an outside company that also monitors that, and we do cross references to find out what restaurants are not sending in the report for one reason or another. Usually this because they didn't score so well on that health department report, and they didn't want anybody to find out. And so guess what? We find out. But then from there, there is a report that goes out weekly that has a list of all those restaurants that did not send those reports in to us, that goes to our vice president of operations. And so the top person within the operations gets that report, and then it's going to be up to the operators to really focus in and say that, hey, listen, that needs to happen. Those operators report to that person, and it's okay that the senior director of food safety says, hey, you need to be doing this, but they don't report to me. And so that's where I think we started off earlier. What kind of pushback or anything that you get from operators for operations? My executive team is fabulous. I mean, they really believe in food safety. They support me 100%. And when we send something to the upper level operators, they take action that's happening out there. Other thing,
you're describing a culture, aren't you? Like what you're describing is cultural, because it wouldn't work any other way.
Yeah. Culture is a big part of everything we do. We have a culture. There is a culture of Texas Roadhouse and being fun, and the integrity and the passion and all those things. And then we also, a part of that is the food safety culture. So when we start talking about this, if I were to walk right over and talk to Jerry Morgan, our CEO right now, and ask him for something, he'll say, okay, show me what you want to do, come back and let's put that in place.
Wow.
That's how much support I have from him and Gina Tobin, our president. Wow. It is wonderful. It's a great thing to have that we do have that much support. Now they'll ask a lot of questions getting to that point, but if I got all the right answers and the right reason, then they're definitely going to do it. The other thing we do with health department reports is we've decided to put together a standardized report based on the FDA criteria.
Smart.
And so when a report comes into us, we put all that information into that. So it's a standardized report throughout the country. So if a particular jurisdiction does not give a score or does not give a letter grade or anything like that, then we provide them with a score, because, hey, all of our managers are very competitive out there and they want to know scores. So we'll give them a score. Sometimes it goes for them or against them. If they have one or two things and a particular jurisdiction scored them very, very low, the report that we put together, which is really risk-based, may be higher. And at the same time, we do have places like we'll name one state with North Carolina. North Carolina has a tendency to write a lot of things up, but not necessarily assign a point value to.
Yes, they do.
Well,
yes, they
yeah,
do.
but so when I get that report in and it has all those items, even though they're non-scored, we put that into our report, and because that is an overall picture of how well that restaurant's doing.
Wow.
And that goes back to the operators to say, listen, we've got some challenges.
That is really interesting. So you're accounting for it in your systems as if it had been a point deduction item. That's interesting.
Absolutely.
And the level of support is that they're getting, Chirag. I know you've been in industry too. Yeah. It is not a universal experience for upper management to say you're going to get what you need as long as you can prove you need it. That's correct. Amazing.
Yep.
Jorge, how about you all? Now you all have 6,000 and change stores in the U.S. How do you view and strategize getting the situational awareness of all of the inspections across so many departments?
Just like Eric, we also require that the report be submitted to the company as part of the operations when they had a health inspection. But we also, at the same time, we have a third party company who collects all of that information and provide it to us. The problem that we have is not all of the health departments post that information, so they collect it from the media, digital, and so we don't have all of it for all of our restaurants. So it's about 80%, 85% who are covered by that. So we already got it, even though they're still required to send it in. It is that 80, the 15% that we always have a little bit of problem and having the same issues as Derek. Not everybody remembers to send it in, and then usually there is a reason behind it. But looking at that report and looking about what they have, or how they score, what the findings were, which are very important to us, is part of our audit system. So we check and we find out where they didn't submit it, and then we take appropriate action. The only thing that we do to standardize it, we don't do it against the food code like Gary did. We do it against the risk factors the CDC has found that are, the main causes of foodborne illness. For us, it's about risk factors. And in that way, by using the risk factors, we can go global. What are the risk factors? That's the part that we normalize everything against. And those numbers are risk factor violations or findings, whether it's a third-party audit, an audit by our own staff from QA, or by the health department, weigh in against the restaurant scoring that we have. And then, there is requirements for follow-ups and verifications and, corrective actions, all the things that you have there. But our systems, are calibrated towards those risk factors globally. That way we can compare a restaurant in Japan with a restaurant in Chicago, or a restaurant in Australia with a restaurant in Texas. They're all under the same system with this, regardless of what the health departments, or regulatory agencies score it. We put it in that format, so we're speaking the same language. And again, risk-based too. So that allows us to have that broad view, and also by doing it this way, it allows us to also put our effort behind those who are falling behind our standards, or those who are continuously failing to meet our standards. It is not unusual for sometimes when you find a restaurant or a group of restaurants that meet the standards, that they don't meet it. They meet it again, that they don't meet it. So we have specific practices to look at those. We call it continuous and recurrent risk to the brand. So we have a system that takes specific actions to those, not just the ones that fail once, but those that continue to pass and fail, be able to get into a level where they're consistently passing.
That's two of the best.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And what you're really doing is you're getting things so you can compare them apples to apples, and make sure you're comparing apples that are actually the most critical ones, and not getting distracted by ephemeral or less serious things. Chirag, do you have anything else? I know we've held them quite a while here, but
we may have to do an encore to learn more.
Have them back, because there's so many things I wanted to talk about, but we would be here like for 5 hours, and then they'd never speak to us again. But anything in closing, and I know, so I want to be very mindful that you all are very competitive private businesses, and so a lot of it's probably not shareable, but anything that you guys are maybe working on, or that you've done that you're really proud of and would like to talk about, and I understand that I'm not asking for trade secrets, so if no, that's fine too, but anything that comes to mind where you're just like, that was a good day and that was a huge accomplishment, and we got it done.
Yeah, I'll share a thing. And first of all, I've always been a belief, and this was taught to me early on, that food safety is not a competitive part here. That I am willing to share just about anything with anybody when it comes to food safety. Now, I'm not. There's a lot of things I'm not going to share about our company, but food safety, because I believe it is something that is so important to our industry as a whole. I will tell you something that I recently did. I hired an analyst. I hired a senior analyst that I have now working for me. And her job is to start connecting all these dots out there. How does we talked about labor earlier. How does labor influence food safety? How does, other things such as turnover, or a new manager in a restaurant, or suspect foodborne illnesses, how do all those link to say, hey, listen, you've got a higher percent chance of having a possible foodborne illness in this restaurant because all these things are lining up. And so, I would think years ago, 30 years ago, when I started doing food safety, it was all about, a bimetallic thermometer and checking things and stuff like that. Now I've got, electronic temperature monitorings and coolers that wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning to tell you that the distributor was there and left the door open on the particular cooler. So it's come a long way. And so we've really tapped into the technical parts and the technology things that are available out there to help make our lives easier. And I think that as I continue to explore this area of doing some analytics on some things, I think I'm going to find restaurants that we thought were good that are maybe not that good, and vice versa. Restaurants that we thought were not good actually are doing a really, really good job. And so I don't know where this will end up, but I'm definitely going to be experimenting with it, and I'm definitely going to use the data, because we got lots of data out there. We're going to use some of that data to figure out how we get better in food safety.
That's going to be really, really, really interesting. And I think AI, I don't know if you all, what your take on this is, but I think AI will present some opportunities as well, right? Just because of the ability to ingest so much information and then give you answers based on it.
Yeah, I'm counting on it. I'm really counting on it.
Yeah. Hopefully so. Jorge, any highlight or just like that was an accomplishment that you'd like to share in closing?
No, an accomplishment, but just like Eric, I'm glad that you put him in here. Yes, we are in a journey to trying to understand, how to analyze the data to give us information that we can be more proactive in developing controls and consistency, to what are the weak spots of our system. We do have that farm to fork, and we have a lot of data in every single step of the way, from the fields, processing, packing, distribution, logistics, to restaurants. Tons of data, which includes health department inspections, third-party inspections, temperatures, all of that. Now we started to put it and connect it together into pharmacy. What does that tell us? What are the weak points? What are the things that happen seasonally? What are the things that happen regularly? What are those things, so that we can develop the process procedures to be able to anticipate and be able to that? We actually had recently a pilot with a very well-known company to be able to do that, and with the hopes to start not only doing that about food safety, but how does that play with business? How does that increase food safety, quality, all of the things that we do, complaints, or because a lot of it is quality. How does increase sales? So we're trying to learn those things so that we do food safety, because that's what we do, as I mentioned earlier, for the benefit of the customer, but also for the benefit of the business, right?
Yeah.
If you're a strong company that have the discipline to execute consistently on your systems, you are going to be a better business company and a more profitable company. That's what we are trying to prove. That's what we're trying to show. And we are looking at AI, and we're looking at tests, and then hopefully another pilot, and then maybe start rolling it out by segments. But we're just at the beginning of a long race. One of the things I'm very excited is that this field is growing very fast. By the way, a lot of the things that I'm learning from other peers, but I'm learning from other industries, like the automotive industry, the pharmaceutical industry. There are other industries that are already being using this a little bit longer, and they have a lot of wins and a lot of insights that can help us. Seems like the food industry is going to be a little bit behind. We're not as in the edge as other ones. So trying to take advantage of those things from other industries who already done it and got in those connections helped us trying to establish similar connections within our industry, within our products, within our risks, and within our solutions.
Wow. I think so. Yeah. Jorge and Eric, I can't thank you all enough. I think it's obvious to even the people who aren't EH, which is the core audience, that there's a reason they're here. Two of the best. And, we've talked a couple times on here with guests about how intimate EH is and what EH professionals do. Like, it's like, especially with food safety, you're ingesting it into your body, you're putting it into your kid's body. And it's just amazing to see how two of the kind of big names that like you can just recognize it from a logo instantly, how they're pushing things forward. The use of data, so exciting. And two people who would have otherwise been doctors, and I think you could just see for yourself how passionate they are about what they're doing, and it should make everybody a little bit more excited about going to Texas Roadhouse or a Wendy's. Because Chirag, they're not all that way, are they?
No. And, I think you and I talked about the profession, the passion. So many years ago, Jorge, Eric, you probably may have heard or not heard, but many years ago, I was inspecting a facility when I was in my field inspection days, and I was wearing a white coat at that time. And someone stopped me and asked me a question. Hey, what do you do? And I told him, I said, why would you ask? He said, you're wearing this white coat. Are you a doctor? I said, no, I'm not. Why are you wearing a lab coat? So, well, I'm a food safety inspector. And so at that time, they actually told me something that I still remember. And, this goes back, almost like 35 years. That lady told me that you're actually better than a doctor, because you both talked about being a doctor or a medical professional. So I said, whoa, wait. Let's pause here and let's hear more from you. Why would you say that? She said the doctors will take care of you once you are sick, but you are making sure that I don't get sick. That just changed my perspective. And, that's what this passion is all about. I really appreciate both of you coming on here and discussing some of the nuts and bolts and what keeps you up at night, etc. And as Cameron said, maybe we may have to do an encore one of these days.
Yeah,
we'll work on
absolutely.
it. Thank you so much, both of you.
Eric Martin, Texas Roadhouse. Go throw peanuts on the floor there. It's fun, and the rolls are great. And Jorge Hernandez from Wendy's. Also, I highly recommend all the new Frosty flavors. If you can't tell, I travel a lot, and I order a lot of food from these restaurants. It's Brave New World. I'm probably not the healthiest ever, but the food is wonderful. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate it, and we enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And we will definitely have you all back. And Chirag, in closing, one of the other things that occurred to me is like it's a mark of a very smart person, but they were talking at the end about, well, there's other industries that have done similar things. It's that insatiable curiosity and willingness to borrow from other people. That was an hour plus, very well spent. I hope the EH audience enjoyed it.
Yeah. And, like Eric said, and Jorge confirmed that food safety is a shareable stuff. I mean, there's no secret because ultimately people's lives matter.
Yeah.
So,
And Chirag, thank you for being basically a co-host here through a bunch of episodes this summer. It's been a fun series of episodes, and thank you all so much. The growth of the channel has been really, really humbling and honoring. And if you are enjoying the content and continue to, if you don't mind, like and subscribe. I want to laugh at myself every time I say that, but I do now realize why people do. Whatever platform you're on, it really does help for it to be then in the feeds of other people like you that would like to hear the conversation. So for all of us here at HS GovTech, I'm Cameron Garrison. I said that again, the Beyond Data Management podcast, powered by HS GovTech. I'm Cameron Garrison. Special thanks in the control room to David Stiles. Always on the ball and even surprises us with extras every single episode, and Christina Miller, producer as well. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining us again today.